This is Elon Musk, currently the richest man in the world with an estimated net worth of almost $400 billion. For most people, it's difficult to fully comprehend such a big number. So let's use an example. Let's say you had $400 billion. And, being the absolute baller that you are, you have a daily spending habit of $1 million.
$1 million.
Think about that. You spend $1 million every single day. Think about what you could buy. Instead of buying a meal, you buy the whole restaurant. Instead of plane tickets, you buy the plane. Instead of a vacation, you buy the island. You might actually find it challenging to buy enough things to spend $1 million daily. But how long could you keep this up? $1 million is a lot of money. How long before all your money ran out? But the fact is, if you spent $1 million every single day, it would take 1,095 years before you spent all your money. Which means you could spend $1 million a day and not even come close to running out of money in your lifetime. As a matter of fact, if you lived until 80, you would need to spend more than $13.7 million a day, every day of your life, including your time as a baby, just to use up all that money. This is how much money Elon Musk has. But how does a person get so rich? Think about it. To get rich, money needs to flow to you, often because you're providing something valuable. Maybe it's your hard work and skills, or perhaps it's capital, like a building you own, or even a new business idea. Money flows to those who supply valuable resources. That's exactly what we're going to look at in this video. The flow of money and how it circulates through the economy. We'll use one of the most fundamental concepts in economics, the circular flow of income model. This model is like a blueprint that shows us how money, goods, services, and resources move continuously between different parts of an economy. Understanding it is key to understanding how an economy operates and even how wealth is generated and distributed. Think about the last time you bought an ice cream. You handed the worker money and they gave you the ice cream. Simple, right? But think deeper. You gave money and got ice cream, while the worker, representing the firm, gave ice cream and got money. You might not often think of it this way, but in every transaction, both the buyer and the seller are simultaneously giving something and getting something of value in return. This exchange is true across the entire economy. Consumers give money and businesses give products. Money flows in one direction and goods and services flow in the other. This constant exchange is what keeps our entire economy going. Now, let's zoom out a bit. Remember, the definition of a market is any arrangement where buyers and sellers are linked together to carry out an exchange. So, when you bought that ice cream, you did so at a type of market, in this case, the ice cream store. In economics, this is called the product market, sometimes called the goods and services market. This is where you go whenever you shop for anything, whether it's clothes, food, or electronics. That's pretty easy to visualize. But here's a market that's not always so obvious. How do businesses make those products? They need resources. There's another market where businesses buy these resources from households in order to produce their goods and services. This is called the resource market, also known as the factor market. And where do these resources come from? They come from the factors of production: land, labor, capital, and entrepreneurship. So, when businesses want more factors of production, they buy them in the resource market. But who is the seller in the resource market? Think about it. How does a business increase its labor? They hire more workers. And who are these workers? They are people, which come from households. Households own the factors of production. They sell these resources and receive money for them. For instance, labor is sold for wages or salaries. Land is leased for rent. Capital is leased for interest. And entrepreneurship is rewarded with profit. All these resources are then used by firms to make products that are sold back to households. See how it all turns in a circle? Money flows in one direction, and goods, services, and resources flow in the other. Every transaction involves exchanging money for goods and services. Money is constantly churning through the economy. People earn money, they spend it, which gives some of that money to someone else who then uses it to buy other things, and so on and so on. You can think of the money flowing through the economy much like blood flowing through your body. You need it to stay alive, just like the economy needs these transactions to stay alive. But what happens if it all suddenly stops? Well, something like that kind of happened in 2020. Because of the COVID-19 pandemic, many governments around the world implemented lockdowns, forcing people to stay at home to prevent the spread of the virus. This meant a lot of people couldn't go to work, leading to a shortage of labor in the resource market. At the same time, there was a sharp drop in demand for many goods and services in the product market. If you can't leave your house, there's not much excess spending to be done. Vacations, concerts, sporting events, anything that wasn't an essential product saw a drastic decrease in consumption. Secondly, it was a very scary and uncertain time for most people. And what do people tend to do with their money when they're scared? They save it. Let's go back to our basic circular flow model for a moment. As we initially drew it, it assumes people spend all of their income on goods and services. But we know that doesn't happen in the real world, right? People try to save money. After all, we're taught that saving for a rainy day is financially responsible. But what you might not realize is that from the perspective of the circular flow, saving is actually bad for the economy. It's money that is being taken out of the system, and in economics, we call that a leakage. A leakage occurs anytime money comes out of the immediate flow between households and firms. If too many people save, it's like taking too much money, the lifeblood of the economy, out of the system, and the whole economy slows down or even dies. And what does a hospital do to save a person that has lost too much blood? They inject more blood. And that's exactly what governments often do to save the economy when it has lost too much money. They provide injections of money. And that's just what many governments, including the American government, did during the pandemic. They issued multiple rounds of economic impact payments directly to households. The purpose of these checks was to inject money back into the system to get the circular flow turning again. The idea was that because this was free money, people would be more likely to spend it rather than save it. So people would use this money to buy goods and services, which would increase demand in the product market, which in turn would increase production by businesses, which would increase demand for factors of production in the resource market, which would give more money to households, and the whole cycle would strengthen again. So, in our more realistic circular flow model, we need to account for these leakages and injections. Let's talk about the three main leakages first. These are ways money exits the direct flow. First, savings. When households earn income, they don't spend all of it. Some is saved in banks or other financial institutions. This money isn't immediately going back to firms as consumption, so savings are a leakage. Second, taxes. Governments collect taxes from both households and firms. This money goes to the government instead of directly circulating between households and firms, making taxes another leakage. And third, imports. When households or firms buy goods and services from other countries, that money flows out of our domestic economy to pay for those imports. So imports are also a leakage. Now, let's look at the three main injections. These are ways money enters or is added to the circular flow. First, investment. Firms borrow money, often from banks where savings are held, to buy capital goods like new machinery, equipment, or buildings. This investment expenditure adds to the demand for goods and services in the economy, injecting money into the flow. Second, government spending. Governments use the tax money they collect, and sometimes borrow, to spend on public goods like infrastructure, education, healthcare, or defense. This spending directly adds money back into the economy, making it an injection. And third, exports. When firms in our economy sell goods and services to other countries, money flows into our economy from those foreign buyers. So exports are also an injection. Ideally, in the long run, you want your total leakages to equal your total injections for a stable economy. While it doesn't always work out perfectly day to day, these flows often come pretty close to being equal in a healthy economy over time. Think about it. When people save money, that money doesn't just sit there. Banks often lend it out for investment by businesses. Taxes go to the government, which then uses that money for government spending on various projects like building roads or paying public sector workers, which puts money back into the system. And while imports are money leaving your country, exports reverse that flow, bringing money back to your domestic economy. So, the circular flow of income model, with its leakages and injections, gives us a much more complete and realistic picture of how money constantly moves and circulates within an economy. It highlights the interconnectedness of households, firms, the government, and the rest of the world. Understanding this flow is crucial for analyzing economic performance, identifying problems, and even designing policies to keep the economy healthy and thriving. That's all for today's deep dive into the circular flow. Keep thinking about how these economic ideas play out in the world around you. See you next time.